The woman standing beside the most feared Alpha King in the north should have been dead. 5 years earlier, the entire Black Hollow pack watched Selene Ashmoor buried alive beneath the eastern cliffs. They heard her fists strike the coffin lid. They heard her voice break as she begged someone to listen. They heard the elders pronounce her guilty. Then they walked away. Now she has returned, not as a prisoner, not as a broken Omega, not as the frightened girl they had thrown into the dark. She returned in a black royal carriage, wearing a silver gown, a moonstone crown, and the calm face of a woman who had survived something meant to destroy her. Beside her stood Alpha King Lucian Thornheart, the ruler of Greyspire, the Wolf King no kingdom dared provoke. His hand rested lightly over hers as they stepped into the courtyard of Black Hollow, and the entire palace fell silent. Selene did not look surprised by their fear. She expected it. She had imagined this moment for 5 years. The guards who once dragged her through the mud now lowered their eyes. The nobles who once spat at her now hid behind painted fans. The elders who signed her death order could not meet her gaze. And at the top of the palace stairs stood Alpha Ronan Valcrest, the man who had once been her secret mate, the man who had listened to the lies, the man who had allowed them to bury her. Ronan stared at her like his own past had risen from the ground. His bride-to-be, Lady Vivienne Morcant, stood beside him in white silk, her face pale beneath her jewels. This was meant to be Vivienne's wedding day, her final victory, the day she would become Luna of Black Hollow. Instead, the dead Omega had walked through the gates holding the arm of another king. Selene stopped at the foot of the stairs. She lifted her eyes to Ronan. For one heartbeat, the courtyard remembered the girl she used to be, soft-spoken, lonely, always standing at the edge of rooms where nobody invited her in. Then the memory vanished. The woman before them was not soft anymore. Alpha King Lucian spoke first, his voice cold enough to silence even the wind. Greyspire has come to honor the wedding of Black Hollow. But everyone knew he had not come to honor anything. He had come to witness ruin. Ronan descended one step. His voice sounded rough. Selene. The name moved through the courtyard like a forbidden word. Selene smiled faintly. Alpha Ronan, you remember me? He flinched, though he tried to hide it. 5 years earlier, he had known her better than anyone. Before the accusations, before the trial, before the coffin, Selene had been his mate. They had found each other in secret, under the moonlit branches behind the old healer's house. She had been an Omega with no rank, and he had been the future Alpha, expected to marry a noblewoman. He told her he would protect her. He told her the bond mattered more than politics. He told her he would never let the pack hurt her. Then Lady Maribel, the woman chosen by the council to be his Luna, was found covered in blood near the river shrine. The pack accused Selene. Witnesses claimed they saw her running from the scene. A knife was found in her room. Ronan believed the evidence. Or maybe he chose to believe it because the truth was harder. Selene begged him to look at her. She begged him to feel the bond. She begged him to remember the girl he had loved. But Ronan stood silent while the elders sentenced her. Burial alive was the oldest punishment in Black Hollow, reserved for traitors who killed noble blood. Selene had entered the grave screaming his name. Ronan had not answered. Now, 5 years later, he stood before her with regret written across his face. But regret had come too late. Selene turned away from him and faced the crowd. I was told Black Hollow loves ceremonies, she said calmly, so I brought one of my own. At her signal, Greyspire soldiers carried a sealed iron chest into the courtyard. The nobles shifted uneasily. Vivienne's fingers tightened around her bouquet. The chest was placed between the two kingdoms. Lucian stepped closer to Selene, not to guide her, but to stand with her. That small gesture was noticed by everyone. He did not treat her like a rescued Omega. He treated her like an equal. Selene placed one hand on the iron chest. For 5 years, Black Hollow called me murderer. For 5 years, my name was used to frighten children. For 5 years, those who buried me enjoyed the comfort of their lie. Her voice remained steady, but the courtyard could feel the blade beneath it. Today, I return that lie to its owners. The first lock opened. Inside the chest lay documents, witness statements, blood-marked letters, and one cracked silver pendant. Vivienne recognized the pendant immediately. Her face changed, only for a second, but Selene saw it. 5 years earlier, that pendant had belonged to Lady Maribel. The noblewoman Selene was accused of killing. The same noblewoman whose death made Selene a criminal. The same noblewoman whose body had never truly been shown to the people. The pack had been told Maribel's body was too damaged for viewing. They accepted it, because nobles told them to accept it. But Selene had learned the truth in the grave. She had not been alone down there. On the night of her burial, while she fought for air inside the coffin, someone had dug through the earth after midnight. At first, Selene thought mercy had come. She thought Ronan had changed his mind. But when the coffin lid opened, the face above her was not Ronan's. It was Vivienne Morcant. She had smiled down at Selene with a lantern in her hand. Selene was half-conscious, her nails broken, her lungs burning. Vivienne leaned close and whispered the words that had kept Selene alive for 5 years. "You should have stayed invisible." Then she ordered 2 rogues to drag Selene from the coffin, not to save her, to make sure the grave held a body. Another girl was already dead beside them, a poor servant with Selene's cloak wrapped around her shoulders. Vivienne needed the grave filled. She needed Black Hollow to believe Selene had died there. Because Selene had not been framed by accident. She had discovered something she was never meant to know. Lady Maribel had not been murdered. She had fled. Maribel had learned that Vivienne and several elders were selling border children to rogue packs in exchange for silver and military support. Maribel planned to expose them. Vivienne found out. She attacked Maribel at the river shrine, spilled enough blood to suggest death, then blamed Selene. But Maribel escaped wounded into the forest. Selene saw her that night. Selene helped her hide. That was why Selene had blood on her dress. That was why witnesses saw her running. That was why the knife appeared in her room. Vivienne knew Selene could prove Maribel was alive. So Selene had to disappear, not by simple execution, by a punishment so terrifying nobody would question it. Selene remembered little after the coffin opened. The rogues dragged her beyond the cliffs. Vivienne ordered them to kill her far from the grave. But Selene's wolf woke for the first time that night. Not fully, not beautifully, not gently. It woke through terror. A buried Omega, betrayed by her mate, thrown into death, suddenly carried a wolf old enough to answer pain with power. She killed one rogue with broken hands. The other fled. Then she crawled through the forest until dawn. That was where Lucienne found her. At the border of Greyspire, covered in mud, barely breathing, still clutching Maribel's broken pendant. Lucienne could have left her there. He did not. He carried her into his kingdom. He gave her healers. He gave her silence. He gave her a room with windows because she could no longer sleep in darkness. For months, Selene did not speak. For months, she woke screaming, clawing at blankets that felt like coffin walls. Lucienne never demanded her story. He simply made sure nobody touched her without permission. A year passed before Selene finally told him everything. Lucienne listened until sunrise. Then he asked one question. "Do you want justice or revenge?" Selene answered, without hesitation. "Both." From that day, Greyspire became her weapon. Not through war, through patience. Lucienne taught her politics. The Queen Mother taught her court language. Spies taught her how secrets moved. Soldiers taught her how fear worked. Healers taught her how wounds lay beneath skin, and Selene taught herself how to wait. She did not rush back to Black Hollow, crying for mercy. She built a case. She found the rogue, who fled. She found the servant's family, whose daughter had been placed in her grave. She found Maribel alive in a hidden sanctuary beyond the mountain pass. Maribel had survived, but fear had kept her silent. Vivienne's allies had hunted her for years. When Selene finally found her, Maribel fell to her knees and wept. Not because she feared Selene, because Selene had suffered for saving her. Together they gathered proof, names, payments, routes, letters, sealed orders, children sold across borders. Elders bribed into silence, warriors paid to lie. And at the centre of it all stood Vivienne Morcant, the noblewoman who wanted to become Luna after Maribel vanished. The woman now dressed for marriage beside Ronan. The woman whose wedding Selene had chosen as the day of judgment. In the courtyard, Selene removed the first document from the chest. This is the testimony of Kellen Voss, former rogue captain who confessed that Lady Vivienne Morcant paid him to remove me from my grave and kill me beyond the cliffs. A murmur broke through the crowd. Vivienne laughed sharply. A forged confession from enemy hands. Selene nodded once. I expected you to say that. A grey spire soldier stepped aside. An older man was brought forward in chains. His face was scarred. His right eye was clouded. But several warriors recognized him. Kellen Voss, the rogue long believed dead. Vivienne stopped breathing. Kellen raised his head. His voice shook, but it carried. She paid us. She ordered the grave opened. She brought another body. She told us the Omega had seen too much. Chaos erupted. Elders shouted. Nobles denied. Warriors reached for weapons. Lucien's soldiers did not move, but every hand rested near a blade. Ronan looked at Vivienne. For the first time, doubt became visible on his face. Vivienne turned to him quickly. You cannot believe this. He is a rogue. He would say anything. Selene lifted the cracked pendant. Then perhaps Black Hollow will believe the woman you claimed was dead. The palace doors opened. A hooded figure stepped out. Slowly she removed the hood. Gasps tore through the courtyard. Lady Maribel was alive. Older, thinner, a scar cutting across her cheek, but alive. Ronan stumbled backward as if struck. The elders who judged Selene turned grey with fear. Maribel walked beside Selene, not behind her. Her voice did not shake. I was not murdered by Selene Ashmoor. She saved my life. Vivienne attacked me because I discovered the trafficking routes protected by this council. The crowd erupted again, but this time the sound was different, not confusion, horror. Parents looked toward the elders. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers stepped away from noble guards. The crime had become larger than Selene. Black Hollow had not only buried an innocent Omega, it had been ruled by wolves who sold their own. Vivienne's beauty vanished beneath panic. She dropped her bouquet. This is treason, she shouted. Grease Spire has staged this to weaken us. Lucien finally moved. His voice was quiet, yet every wolf heard it. If I wanted to weaken Black Hollow, Lady Vivienne, my armies would be at your walls. Instead, I brought witnesses. More people entered the courtyard, a former record keeper, 2 border guards, a healer who treated Maribel in secret, a mother whose son vanished from the lower quarter, a servant who had washed blood from Vivienne's cloak the night Maribel disappeared. One by one, they spoke. Not all loudly, not all bravely. Some cried, some trembled. But each testimony pulled another stone from Vivienne's throne of lies, and Selene stood through it all without blinking. This was not sudden revenge. This was a grave opening from the inside. Every truth was another handful of dirt thrown back at those who buried her. Ronan looked destroyed, but Selene did not comfort him. His pain was not her responsibility anymore. When the final witness finished, the courtyard had changed. The people no longer stared at Selene as a ghost. They looked at her as proof that the powerful could bleed truth if someone brave enough returned. Ronan turned to the elders. "You knew?" None answered. That silence condemned them. One elder tried to run. Grey Spire soldiers blocked him. Another fell to his knees. A third began begging before anyone accused him. Vivienne saw the circle closing. Her gaze shifted from Ronan to Selene, then to Lucia, then back to Selene. Her face twisted. "You think this makes you powerful?" Vivienne said. "You were still the girl in the coffin. You still screamed until your voice broke. You still begged for a man who did not come." The words hit the courtyard with cruelty. Ronan lowered his head. Selene stepped forward. For the first time, her calm cracked just enough for everyone to feel the fire beneath it. "Yes," she said. "I screamed. I begged. I broke my nails against wood while all of you slept under warm roofs. I prayed for air. I prayed for mercy. I prayed for one person to question what they had been told." She looked across the crowd, and no one came. The silence became heavy. "But I did not die there. That is what you never understood. You buried an Omega and created a witness. You buried a girl and forced a queen to crawl out." Vivienne lunged. Not at Selene, at Maribel. A hidden blade flashed from her sleeve. Ronan moved too late. Lucien moved faster. But Selene was already there. Her wolf surged through her eyes, silver and black, ancient and merciless. She caught Vivienne's wrist before the blade touched Maribel. The crack of bone echoed across the courtyard. Vivienne screamed. Selene did not release her. For 5 years, she had imagined killing the woman who destroyed her life. She had imagined teeth, claws, blood on palace stones. But standing there, with Vivienne shaking in her grip, Selene discovered something stronger than rage. Control. She leaned close enough for only Vivienne to hear at first. "I wanted to tear you apart." Then she raised her voice for the kingdom. But death would make this too easy. She released Vivienne, and Grey Spire guards seized her. Selene turned to Ronan. "Black Hollow law buried me alive for a crime I did not commit. Let Black Hollow law decide what happens to those who committed the real crimes." Ronan looked at her with grief, shame, and something that once might have been love. "Selene," he said softly, "I failed you." She did not deny it. Yes, the single word hurt more than any speech could have. He stepped closer, but Lucien's presence stopped him. Not with threat, with truth. Selene was no longer Ronan's to approach freely. Ronan swallowed. "I should have trusted the bond." Selene looked at him for a long moment. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath. Then she answered, "You should have trusted me. Nothing more. Nothing less." Ronan broke, but so did not. The old bond between them had withered the night. He chose silence over her life. Maybe some part of it remained in memory. Maybe some scar would always remember his name. But memory was not destiny. Pain was not love, and regret was not repair. Vivienne and the guilty elders were arrested before the entire pack. Not quietly, not politely. They were stripped of rank in the same courtyard where they had once judged an innocent Omega. Their estates were sealed. Their guards were removed. Their records were seized. By sunset, the lower quarter learned what had truly happened. Families gathered in the streets, lighting candles for missing children whose names had been erased from official books. For the first time, Black Hollow mourned honestly. That night, Ronan requested to see Selene alone. Lucienne asked if she wanted him nearby. Selene shook her head. Not because she needed privacy, because she needed to face the past without hiding behind anyone. They met in the old moon garden. 5 years earlier, Ronan had kissed her there and promised forever. Now the flowers had grown wild. Ronan looked older under the moonlight. Power had not protected him from guilt. "I searched for you after the burial," he said. Selene's expression did not change. "After?" His jaw tightened. "I believed you were guilty. Then something felt wrong. I went to the grave days later and found a body. Yes, that body had a name, Selene said. Nera Val, a servant. 17 years old. Vivienne used her because people like her think poor girls are easier to erase. Ronan closed his eyes. I did not know. You did not want to know. That truth landed between them. He nodded slowly. You are right. For a while, only the wind moved. Then Ronan whispered, Is there any part of you that can forgive me? Selene looked at the moon. Forgiveness had once seemed impossible. For years, she thought keeping hatred alive was the only way to honor the girl in the coffin. But revenge had not given that girl air. Truth had, justice had, survival had. I will not carry you inside me anymore, she said. If that is forgiveness, then take it. But I will never return to the woman who loved you. Ronan's eyes shone. I know, no, Selene said gently. You don't. You remember a version of me that needed you. That woman died underground. The one standing here chose herself. Ronan bowed his head, not as Alpha, as a man who finally understood what his silence cost. When Selene left the moon garden, Lucien waited beyond the archway. He did not ask what Ronan said. He did not ask if she still loved him. Lucien had never built his love from possession. That was why Selene trusted him. They walked together toward the guest wing. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Then Selene said, I thought revenge would feel louder. Lucien glanced at her. And? It feels quiet. That is how you know it belongs to you, not to your pain. She smiled faintly. Only Lucien could draw that softness from her without trying to own it. Their marriage had begun as strategy, graced by a political balance. Selene needed protection strong enough to return with proof. But somewhere between sleepless nights, war councils, and silence, shared beside winter fires, strategy became something else. Lucien had seen her nightmares and never called her broken. He had seen her anger and never called her cruel. He had seen her power and never asked her to make it smaller. The next morning, Black Hollow gathered again. This time, not for a wedding, for judgment. Vivienne stood chained before the pack with the guilty elders beside her. Maribel testified head fully. Kellen confirmed every route. The record keeper exposed accounts filled with silver from rogue territories. The mothers of missing children spoke names the council had buried. Ronan, as Alpha, sentenced the traitors according to pack law. Vivienne was stripped of title and sent to the mountain prison of Thornfall, where traitors lived without rank, silk, servants, or power. The elders were removed from office and imprisoned. Their wealth was seized to compensate families harmed by their crimes. Every child found through the recovered records would be searched for, returned if alive, and honored if lost. And Selene Ashmoor was publicly declared innocent, not quietly written into a record. Not whispered among officials, declared before every wolf in Black Hollow. Ronan knelt before her in the courtyard. The Alpha of Black Hollow lowered himself before the Omega he had condemned. The crowd followed, one by one. Warriors, nobles, servants, elders who had not been guilty but had been cowardly, families who believed the lie. The entire pack knelt. Selene stood still. 5 years earlier they had looked down on her coffin. Now they looked up at her crown. Ronan said, Black Hollow wronged you beyond repair. No sentence can restore what was stolen. But before this pack and the moon, I acknowledge your innocence, your suffering, and your strength. Selene Ashmoor, daughter of no noble house, you were more honorable than every ranked wolf who failed you. For a moment, Selene could not speak. Not because she was weak. Because the girl inside her, the one who had cried in the dark, finally heard what she had needed. Not love, not pity. Truth. Selene stepped forward. I accept the truth, she said, but I do not belong to Black Hollow anymore. She turned to the crowd. Let my name be cleared, but do not use my survival to comfort yourselves. Remember what your silence allowed. Remember how easily a poor Omega became a grave for noble sins. Remember Nera Vale, whose body was used to protect criminals. Remember the missing children. If Black Hollow wants honor, it must build it where it failed first. Her words passed through the courtyard with more power than any royal decree. Then Lucienne stepped beside her. Selene looked at him. This time she did not take his arm because she needed support. She took it because she chose him. Together, they left Black Hollow under a sky washed clean by morning light. At the gates, Maribel stopped Selene. The two women stood facing each other. Once they had been strangers connected by a crime. Now they were survivors of the same lie. Maribel held Selene's hands. "You saved me twice," she whispered. "Once from death, once from fear." Selene shook her head. "We saved each other." Maribel remained in Black Hollow to rebuild the council with the lower families, included for the first time in Pack history. Ronan remained as Alpha, but not as the man he had been. His reign changed after Selene's return. He opened old cases. He removed blood rank privileges from trials. He built a memorial for Nera Vale and every missing child named in Vivian's records. Some said he did it for redemption. Others said he did it because Selene's truth had left him no place to hide. But Selene did not stay to watch him become better. That was no longer her story. Her story continued in Greyspire. When she returned to Lucien's kingdom, the people did not receive her as a rescued bride. They received her as their future queen. The palace bells rang across the cliffs. Children threw white petals along the road. Warriors struck their shields in salute. And for the first time since the grave, Selene heard loud noises without fear. That evening, in Greyspire's moonlit hall, the wedding ceremony continued. Not the wedding Black Hollow expected. Not a political display of revenge. A real union. Selene walked toward Lucienne beneath hanging silver lanterns. No chains, no accusations, no coffin darkness. Just open air, warm light, and a king waiting for her, with quiet pride in his eyes. When she reached him, Lucienne did not say she belonged to him. He said, "You are free beside me, or not beside me at all." Selene's eyes softened. That was why she loved him. Not because he saved her. Because he never made salvation a cage. Before the moon altar, Selene spoke her vow. "I came to you as a wound. You did not ask me to heal quickly. You did not fear the sharp parts of me. You gave me room to become more than what happened to me. I choose you, Lucienne Thornheart, not from fear, not from debt, not from revenge, but from the life still want." Lucienne's voice lowered. "I choose you, Selene Ashmoor, not because you survived darkness, but because you are more than survival. I choose your mind, your fire, your silence, your storms, your mercy, your crown, and every dawn you decide to meet." The moon accepted them, not with thunder, not with spectacle, with a soft silver glow that filled the hall and touched Selene's chest where the old bond scar had once ached. The pain did not vanish like magic, but it loosened. For the first time, her past felt behind her, not around her throat. Months later, when winter melted into spring, Greyspire received word from Black Hollow. Vivienne had confessed fully after her allies abandoned her. More children had been found alive in rogue territories. Maribel's new council had begun reforms. Ronan had not remarried. He had sent one final letter to Selene. Lucienne gave it to her unopened. Her choice. Selene held the letter for a long time. Then she walked to the balcony overlooking Greyspire's cliffs. Below, the sea crashed against stone. Above, the moon hung full and bright. She did not open the letter. She placed it in the firebowl and watched the edges curl into ash. Not out of hatred, out of peace. Some doors did not need to be reopened to prove they were closed. Lucienne joined her quietly. Selene leaned against him. For once, no nightmare waited behind her eyes. No coffin, no dirt, no screaming. Only wind, only moonlight. only the steady warmth of a future she had chosen. 5 years earlier, Black Hollow buried an Omega alive and thought the story ended in the ground. They were wrong. The grave became the beginning. The coffin became the witness. The silence became evidence. And the woman they tried to erase returned with a crown, a king, and a truth, sharp enough to cut through every lie. But the most powerful part of Selene Ashmoor's revenge was not that Vivienne fell. It was not that Ronan knelt. It was not that Black Hollow finally spoke her name with honor. It was that Selene lived long enough to stop needing their regret. She did not become whole because they apologized. She became whole because she chose not to remain buried in the place they left her, and under the silver moon of Grey Spire, beside the Alpha King who loved her without chains. Selene finally understood something the grave had failed to teach her. Some women do not return from darkness to beg for the life they lost. Some return to build a better one, and when they do, even kingdoms learn to kneel.